It's a gut-shot reaction, if you would, to that remarkable, the resignation speech that never used the word resign, I think, Andrew.
Well, I think in one sense, James, unremarkable. It was the Boris Johnson we've come to know. It was exactly what you would have written for him if you'd been script writing for him. Not a likely thought, I know, but it's exactly what you'd have expected in terms of tone. I think there is one really, really important and urgent unresolved issue there. I was talking to some very senior members of the 1922 Committee of Backbenchers. They're the ones who would have ousted him had he not gone today, and they're the ones who will have to meet him shortly to discuss the process of choosing a new leader. And they are unequivocal that they do not want him to stay on as a caretaker Prime Minister. They want him to pass the baton to somebody. It might be Dominic Raab, it might be somebody else, and now to go. They say he cannot take any further substantive or important decisions now as Prime Minister. It is over. So there's a real argument to be had there. He clearly intends to stay on till the autumn, when, of course, the party conference comes. Is he thinking one great final farewell at the party conference, a sobbing, contrite, buyer's remorse gathering of the Conservative Party, and maybe, who knows, another turn in the story? They don't want that to happen, of course. Their argument is that in the next 2 weeks, they have time, however brutal and however fast it'll be, to select a final 2 candidates to take over from him. They then go to the party in the country. That's all the Conservative members in the country who get to choose in the final runoff. And that will take August.
Right.
So their argument is that certainly by the mid to late September, possibly even by the beginning of September, there could be a new Conservative leader in post. And that person will certainly oust Boris Johnson immediately from number 10. But their argument is that that is too long for him to be there for the rest of this month and through August is too long, and somebody else needs to take over, and he should hand the baton right now to Raab. And that's where the argument, I think, is going to be.
I mean, and it won't be a pretty argument, will it? I mean,
no, it won't.
It's cornered rat territory yet again. What does leverage look like then? What can be brought to bear? Because we've had a crash course in what a government abandonment looks like over the last couple of days. What weapons are left in the arsenal of the 22 and of colleagues past and present who are desperate to see him walking out of the door today?
Well, frankly, it's a collection of rather musty old muskets and damp powder, I think. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, he's still Prime Minister in name, and he has that huge kind of machine under his bottom and with his hands on the levers, and they don't. All they can do is produce a new leader as quickly as possible. The new leader is then the Prime Minister. That will happen very quickly when it happens. Right. But they don't. They can't really threaten him with anything. I can't think of anything they could possibly threaten him with. There are more stories. You were talking about the Lebedev story. Yes. I think the Lebedev story is one of the really, really important ones. And MPs, by the way, in the Commons this morning are all talking about that. So there could be a question of whether there are further scandals to come out and so on. But no, I don't think they have got many, except, of course. They can dangle even now that thought that he could leave in a sort of dignified manner, thanked by the Conservative Party and not dividing it. Does he really want a divided, rancorous and still angry Conservative Party when he hands over, or does he want one where the process of healing has begun? And some people who are his biggest critics are saying, well, we heard in that speech, a very quick playlist of the familiar greatest hits, Brexit and the pandemic and the vaccine rollout and Ukraine and so on. And it would still be possible for leading Tories to put together a kind of, he had his faults, but he took us through this period and he did that. And if he wants that to be the Tory narrative, then he can't rile them too much. Okay. But that's as much as the ammunition as they've got, I think.
Apart from a sort of valedictory lap of honour at conference in October, what other reason could there be for him refusing to do what the party clearly wants him to do? I mean, are there any other reasons behind it, apart from vanity or almost reality denial?
Well, this is what's really dangerous for the Conservative Party, because let me give an example. Let's say the Russians launch a new missile attack which hits Kyiv, and there's a huge eruption of emotion around the world about Ukraine on its back, fighting desperately for its survival. And Johnson, next month, while still Prime Minister, goes there and is warmly embraced by an exhausted and shattered-looking President Zelensky. And then he comes back and he says to the Conservative Party, there's nobody else. Or Zelensky comes to the Conservative conference and says, there is nobody else in the Western world who has given me the kind of support that Boris Johnson. Are you really sure you want to get rid of this man? Is it possible, even then, there'll be some kind of last-minute change of heart by enough people? I don't know. The answer is no, it isn't possible, but he might be thinking of that. He might be dreaming of that. That process itself rips the Conservative Party in two, and that's what they're frightened of.
And I mean, that tallies with some of Dominic Cummings' warnings today as well.
It certainly does.
That
yes.
idea that he will have. If we had to write a headline then, Andrew Marr, I suppose it would have to be "Leave doesn't mean leave."